Welcome back right here at Third Phase Moon. We've been doing some research while everybody's staying at home. It's April 17th, 2020, and the mystery still remains. Who is Akhenaten from Egypt? Is his DNA from this world? And the mystery behind Osiris, including information never before heard in regards to the Sphinx and the mystery in Egypt. Get ready, everybody, and buckle up. There's a wealth of information that you're about to learn. Share this with your friends. Akhenaten was a pharaoh in the 18th dynasty, father of the famous King Tut. He would soon be called the Heretic King because of the extent at which ancient Egyptians want to erase his legacy from history. Because of this, very little is known about him. But what we do know about him makes us wonder who or what he really was. Let's begin with his appearance. First, unlike every pharaoh before him, Akhenaten chose to have himself depicted the way he actually looked. And we have to admit, his appearance is remarkably strange. Almond-shaped eyes, a pot belly, spindly limbs, and an elongated skull. His look was a stark contrast to every previous pharaoh before him. They chose to only have themselves depicted in top physical form. Akhenaten soon turned Egypt on its head by creating the greatest act of heresy that Egyptians had ever known. Akhenaten proclaimed that the Egyptians would no longer believe in a pantheon of multiple gods, but would now worship only one god. Because of this, it's been speculated that Akhenaten and the biblical Abraham might be one and the same. However, Akhenaten did not truly believe in monotheism, the belief in one god. He absolutely believed the other gods existed, but decided that they would no longer be worshipped. But all worship and prayers would now only belong to one god, the Aten, or better known as the sun. Everything about this pharaoh was different, all the way down to his DNA. The theory that aliens from another world may have assisted in the building the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt might explain how some of the most amazing and mysterious engineering feats in human history were accomplished. Moving massive stone blocks and assembling them into something so colossal and precise seems like insurmountable task even today. How did people manage it so many thousands of years ago without the use of modern construction techniques? Logically, it appears that ancient Egyptians must have known something or someone that we don't. Some say only access to advanced technology would have allowed them to create stone structures, some with blocks weighing in the neighborhood of 70 tons with such perfect mathematical alignment. Then again, maybe we aren't giving them the respect they deserve. The ancient Egyptians were awfully smart, so maybe they could have well built their own darn pyramids without any help from extraterrestrials. But the fact is, the seven wonders of the ancient world not only is the Great Pyramid of Giza, the only one still standing, but it was already almost 2,000 years old when other cultures began to build their own wonders. Stuart Fleischmann, assistant professor of comparative genomics at the Swiss University in Cairo, and his team have recently published the result of a 7-year study that mapped the genomes of 9 ancient Egyptian pharaohs. 8 of the pharaohs sampled were completely normal, but the 9th sample taken from the tomb of KV-55, believed to be Akhenaten, was highly unusual. Fleischmann and his team subjected the precious samples of ancient DNA to a process called polymerase chain reaction, PCR. In the field of molecular biology, this technique is often used to replicate and amplify a single copy of a piece of DNA, giving researchers a clear picture of someone's genetic fingerprint. A small fragment from the brain tissue has been the source of the DNA sample, and the test was reported using bone tissue, but the same results were obtained. One of the culprits' name was the CXPAC-5, which is responsible for cortex growth. It appears this increased activity in Akhenaten's genome would suggest that he had a higher cranial capacity because of the need to house a larger cortex. But what mutation would have caused the human brain to grow? Telomerase, a genetic enzyme, is only expanded by 2 processes: extreme aging and extreme mutation. Genetic and archaeological data suggests Akhenaten lived to be about 45 years of age. This is not nearly enough to consume all the chromosomal telomeres. This hypothesis is also backed up by the fact that electron microscopes analysts reveal signs of nucleatic cicatrix, which is a telltale sign of DNA helix healing after being exposed to strong mutagens. Results of the osseous tissue sampled from the skull of Akhenaten, it is far denser and fundamentally different from other mummies of the same age and period. Akhenaten's skull and skeletal structure are twice as dense and twice as strong as modern humans. Stuart Fleshman is now being celebrated for making this incredible discovery. However, Stuart shouldn't pop the cork just yet, because we made a discovery of our own, a link from ancient history that the academic world has completely overlooked. Herodotus, also known as the world's first historian, gives a brief description about visiting an ancient battlefield between Egyptian and Persian armies. On this field where this battle was fought, I saw a very wonderful thing which natives pointed out to me. The bones of the slain lie scattered upon the fields in two lots. Those of the Persians in one place by themselves, as the bodies lay first, those of the Egyptians in the other place apart from them. If then you strike the Persian skulls, even with a pebble, they were so weak you'd break a hole in them. But the Egyptian skulls were so strong that you might smite them with a stone and you'd scarcely break them in. They gave me the following reason for the difference, which seemed to me more likely enough. The Egyptians from early childhood have shaved their heads, and so by the action of the sun, the skulls became thick and hard. The same cause prevents baldness in Egypt, where you see fewer bald men than any other land. Such then is the reason why skulls of Egyptians are so strong. The Persians, on the other hand, had feeble skulls, because they kept themselves shaded from the sun, wearing turbans upon their heads. Now obviously Herodotus could not understand why the Egyptians' bones were so strong. He equated it to shaving their heads and getting lots of sun. Were the Egyptians of antiquity really that much more advanced than everyone else way back then? Well, those who subscribe to ancient astronaut theory, like myself, have more reasons than the complexity of the pyramid design to think that aliens may have had a hand in ancient Egypt. Is there evidence to conclude that visitors from another planet have been here thousands of years, guiding and influencing an advancement of mankind? Or are the ancients far more advanced than we realize? And has some important information been lost through the ages? Assuming the pyramids were built by human hands, how would this have been accomplished? Most of the blocks that comprise the Great Pyramid of Khufu are solid limestone and granite. The limestone blocks were likely taken from local sources, but the granite rocks, some over 70 tons, were hauled from a site over 500 miles away. Now, how the heck did a civilization that didn't use wheels move these things to the site? And when they got them there, how did they put them into place? Well, this is the subject that has been pondering the debate through the ages. But researchers now have some ideas how it could have happened. Most experts agree that ramps of some kind were used to get the blocks into position, but the configuration of those ramps remain unknown. Some think several long ramps from the ground to work the area were constructed and modified throughout the building. Others think that ramps would have been spiraled around the outside of the pyramid, and still others think that pyramids may have been built from the inside out. One ancient account suggests the blocks were lifted into place using some kind of fulcrum mechanism that allowed a team of workers to move them with really relative ease. Now, as for dragging the blocks along the ground, some speculate that either round timbers or some kind of lubricated slipway may have been used to make them easier to move. The Nile River was almost certainly used to transport the blocks great distances on barges. So looking at the methods above, any combination of those techniques as well as many still to be thought up could account for how many humans may have built the pyramids. Now fast forward a couple thousand years. Now we understand the science of genetics. These are a few paragraphs written thousands of years ago and now validating this new genetic study. And also adding to it because it proves not only that Akhenaten genetically different, but in fact entire armies were genetically different. It's also interesting to note that having bones twice as strong as your opponent means absolutely nothing in battle. Just like other countries, at the time of the Persians, armies decimated the Egyptians, which led the way for Herodotus to make this amazing discovery. This study might not prove that alien hybrids were walking around with ancient Egyptians or ruling out them as pharaohs, but it does suggest it. Currently, there is a second team attempting to reproduce Stuart Fleischmann's findings, hoping to either disprove or validate his work. Was Akhenaten a hybrid alien with its own DNA?
When it comes to ancient Egypt, nothing is more highly debated than the age of the Sphinx. Some people believe it's over 5,000 years old, and some others believe it's between 12 to 13,000 years old, and some also think that it's up to 25,000 years old. So why such different times? Why is there no consensus of the age of the Sphinx? Well, there's a few things we know for sure. First, the Sphinx is older than the pyramids. Well, how do we know this? Well, going by standard Egyptian chronology, there are records indicating the existence of the Sphinx before the reign of Khufu, the creator of the Great Pyramid. In modern times, when we had discovered the Sphinx, it was covered up to its neck in sand. So there was a long time it was believed that the Sphinx was nothing but a head. But as excavations started to take place all around Egypt, it was discovered that it was not just a head, but there's an entire body attached to the Sphinx. And now, today, modern geologists who study the Sphinx determined that the outside perimeter wall has been eroded away by rain and water. It's fairly unanimous in the world of academia that it hasn't rained like that in over 11,000 years. So even in ancient times, the Sphinx was already ancient, and the Sphinx isn't alone. There's another place in Egypt that was ancient in ancient times. And this temple is unlike any of its surrounding temples near it. It's 15 meters under the ground, and it's made from giant, perfectly cut pieces of solid granite. And although granite is used in a lot of statues and blocks in Egypt, there are no buildings made of solid granite, except for Osirian. If that wasn't strange enough, the Osirian is also lower than the natural water table, so every year, the Osirian fills with water and has to be pumped out. But then, a discovery was made that blew everything else out of the water. Now, while everyone was so wrapped up in the discovery of Tomb Osiris, people were distracted away from the incredible engineering that took place. They started with a shaft, cut 20 feet straight down, then took a 90-degree angle, then went out 40 foot more, then went straight down another 40 feet, till you came to a staging room that had 7 hollowed out carved places inside were 7 granite stone sarcophagi. And in the corner of that room was found another shaft, cut straight down to 90 feet underneath the Sphinx. And there they found the tomb of Osiris.
We know the Sumerians revered gods they called the Anunnaki. And not only the Sumerians, apparently other cultures knew of these deities as well. These days, the Anunnaki are the center of a great deal of debate regarding ancient aliens and what exactly the ancient people knew. Much of this stems from the work of Zecharia Sitchin. Back in the 1970s, after interpreting and studying ancient Sumerian texts, Sitchin realized they have revealed stunning information about the origins of the human race. He then wrote a bunch of books where he put forward his theories. Sitchin believed in the Anunnaki originated from Nibiru, a rogue planet that takes thousands of years to orbit the sun. The Anunnaki came to Earth. They were a working class of aliens, sent here to mine gold to bring back to their home. According to Sitchin, they rebelled against poor working conditions. The decision was made to genetically modify prehistoric humans by incorporating Anunnaki DNA and creating a new slave species. In the blink of an eye, Homo sapiens was born. That's us. As you can probably imagine, many have found issue with Sitchin's revelations and his interpretation of ancient texts, but others have stood behind his work and found further evidence to support it. According to those who back ancient astronaut theory, evidence of alien visitation is all over the place. Religious texts, art, architecture of ancient worlds are packed with different references of extraterrestrial visitors from another world. Surely if aliens had been here before, they would have left evidence of their presence. Well, the proof may be in the pyramids themselves. It's easy to think as the pyramids only as giant block buildings, but in reality there are much more than that. Even more amazing than their construction is the hidden details of their structure. At first that might sound about right until you realize there are about 2.5 million blocks in the pyramid. Which means if crews worked 10 hours a day, a block had to be put in place every couple of minutes. That's not including moving the ramps around and other stuff that must have gone into the building. Look at it this way. It seems to me that a little help from extraterrestrial technology would have been welcome. The Great Pyramid of Khufu was built to very precise alignments. It's said that the pyramid is aligned to the true north to an accuracy of 3/60th of a degree. And at that time it was built, it was likely aligned exactly true north, as true north shifts over time. The Great Pyramid is the only pyramid with air shafts, and in ancient times those shafts have aligned with specific stars important to ancient Egyptian religion. Nobody knows for sure what these shafts were for, but theories include spiritual reasons, the use of a pyramid as an astronomical observatory, and even the idea that the Great Pyramid may have been some kind of alien power plant. The Great Pyramid appears four-sided, but actually it's eight-sided with four concave faces. Why? Some experts say that this is only structural design. It's important to remember that the face of the pyramid we see today was not its finished face, as the casing blocks that would have adorned the surface have worn away or crumbled over time. Still, the Pyramid of Khufu is the only pyramid to feature this design. Why weren't other pyramids built this way? Some researchers speculate the design may have an astronomical function, and have come up with calculations over the years that correlate the 8 sides of the pyramid to important phases of the calendar year. According to theory, the entire layout of the pyramid region, the Nile River included, was intended to match the alignment of the Milky Way galaxy. But here's the kicker. When researchers look back at the constellations and how they would have appeared to early observers over centuries past, the age of the pyramid region appears to date back to around 10,500 BC. Could the pyramids, or at least the layout of the region, really be that old? And what kind of civilization could have configured this back at the time when most humans were still hunting mammoths? So if mankind was so primitive, how could they have built
A sarcophagus that was over 12 feet long, whose lid alone weighed 9 tons. It rested in a pool of water surrounded by 4 pillars on each corner. They had appeared to be at one time black granite stone, obelisk, but has since been destroyed. So was there a god in there? Who was inside this giant sarcophagus? Well, Egyptologists tell us nobody was in there. It was a symbolic tomb, and this place was a place of prayer and worship. Although there are no remnants of any offerings to the gods or sacrifices that were made, and there were no ladders of any means of getting down to the tomb. Another interesting point is the shape and design of the tomb of Osiris. It has no markings, no magical inscriptions to ensure the god's king's passage into heaven. It was blank, not a single hieroglyphic on the tomb itself anywhere. It was pretty rare for any sarcophagus to be made up of solid granite, but there is no other place that contains a giant sarcophagi, and it's just as mysterious as this tomb. They weigh up to 50 tons and were carved from a single block of granite. Sarcophagi were moved underground through hallways carved out of bedrock that are barely wide enough for the sarcophagi to fit through. Now, there are theories on how they move stones for constructing their pyramids. Are there any other gods that have a tomb? Why is Osiris depicted with his dark green alien skin? Was it to represent his death and what happens to the human body after it dies, or was it meant to represent an alien god who descended from the stars? Or was this just a figment of the imagination of some ancient Egyptian? It does seem curious that the ancient Egyptians don't speak of Osiris as some kind of men spoke about him as a king of their past. Their first king, the creator of civilization, he had his own land. His brother and sister has had land as well. He had his own people that prayed to him, his own temples dedicated to him. Laws and rules were governed by him. And for example, to show you how far back in time that Osiris supposedly existed, his first rules for helping to create civilization was that his followers, man, can no longer eat each other. He banned cannibalism.
It's hard to imagine that ancient humans living over 12,000 years ago would have possessed the knowledge or technology to build such elaborate structures. So could they have had help? Egypt isn't the only location where you'll find huge, impressive pyramids. Pre-Columbian South American cultures built pyramids on the other side of the world. Sumerians built pyramids, and even some Native American cultures had pyramid-like structures. Why and how did so many diverse cultures from different areas from the world find it necessary to build similar structures? We could come up with a handful of answers for this. Number 1. Pyramids are simply sturdy. They're also a universal design. Pyramids have a symbolic point skyward and a wide base on Earth and an apex in the heavens. It's not a great stretch of mind to understand why this might be important to various people throughout history. It would also not be surprising that multiple cultures would reach the same conclusion in isolation. Number 2. People traveled around the world in ancient times. Is it possible that ancient South Americans traveled to Egypt or vice versa and spread their ideas and culture? If true, this would rewrite the history of our world. And number 3. Aliens were involved. If beings from another world influenced the ancient Egyptians, certainly they wouldn't have stopped there. They may have contacted other civilizations at the same time or later in history. Whatever the reason, the presence of ancient pyramids at different locations around our planet is certainly intriguing. After all, in less than a couple hundred years, we've gone from the horse buggy to the telegraph to airplanes, and we could break the sound barrier and advanced computers like the one you're looking at right now. It's important to understand that the abilities of the ancients, the world and the human culture is a lot older than we tend to think, and our ancestors were certainly capable of amazing feats. Perhaps some of these ways were lost over time.
Lord Osiris, creator of civilization. I want to get your opinions, people, below of what was the Pharaoh Osiris up to? Why did he reveal what the Sphinx truly looks like? Some people say there's many other secrets of the Sphinx that is still yet to be revealed. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Keep your eyes on the skies. Blake Cousins. We'll see you again next time.